Hi, Luke here. I'm going to walk you through our guide on how to improve your writing skill. And this is very similar to improving speaking. You can start writing whenever you like, and really, just like with speaking, you can start writing as soon as you can form a sentence. So I would recommend you do it after finishing phase 5 of the Mandarin Blueprint method curriculum, which would build a nice foundation for you of 1,000 words, both reading, writing, and pronunciation, and just production and comprehension, which is a nice sort of foundation to be able to create sentences. But really, you should start writing whenever you can form a sentence, because every time you form a sentence, whether speaking or writing output, it helps you activate vocabulary and just overall improves your Chinese skill, your Mandarin skill. And when I say writing, don't be intimidated. I'm not talking about essays here, guys. I'm not talking about writing a whole story or anything like that. A single sentence counts as writing. So just remember that as we go forward. So let's go through this. So why practice writing? Because a lot of people don't, and it's quite intensive. I'd say it's the most intensive, as in it uses the most energy of all the 4 areas of language learning: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Writing is probably the most intensive, and a lot of people tend to put it off. But why should you not put it off? Why should you go and do it? Well, there are things about writing specifically that we're going to get into. 4 major things that benefit specifically about writing that make it awesome. But from a general perspective, writing and speaking should both be done because they're separate skills that need to be developed. If you want to be good at writing, you have to write. If you want to be good at speaking, you have to speak. Regardless of the fact that, of course, the majority, we cannot have a chance at speaking or writing if we don't get comprehensible input consistently, reading and listening. That's where the majority of our results comes from. But you can't just sit there, read and listen for thousands of hours and then suddenly you're able to write and speak perfectly. It does take practice. It's just that most of the acquisition happens in here through input. Writing and speaking have the same benefits. They activate vocabulary very well. The things that maybe you've already acquired subconsciously, but you can't use them whenever you need to, i.e. you can't be fluent with them. You can't just produce them in a situation where it comes up easily, and that's why you need to practice these things. So that's one reason. They are separate skills that do need to be practiced. But the other reason is, same with speaking, when you produce the language properly and people understand it, and especially with writing, you can marvel at it. You can sit there and look at the paper or the computer screen. I produced that. Just so that you can look at a conversation that you just had and have that feeling of connecting with someone else, putting your thoughts into their brain, exactly the thoughts you wanted, and then getting a response. It's what we're doing this for, basically. It's what we're learning language for that thrill, at least most people. So those are just on a general perspective. Let's look more specifically at what makes writing special and why you should do it. So first of all, writing is slow. And what I mean by that is, unlike speaking, where you're there with the person, and even if you're paying that person $10, $20 an hour to listen to you talk and help you with your Chinese, it's still awkward and it's still frustrating when you're sitting there and you're trying to think of that word, but maybe you know the word, but you're not sure if you're going to use it correctly, and then you go and use it because you have to, because you can't just sit there and say, well, you can, I suppose. You could just sit there and say, wait a second while I go and look up this word. There's a moment of silence, maybe 30 seconds or a minute of silence while the teacher's just sitting there. Okay. Or you have to just ask the teacher how to say it. Whereas with writing, you're not there in the moment. You can take as much time as you want. If you want to take 20 minutes to write a single sentence correctly, because there's a word that you want to really understand that you want to use, but you want to maybe check some example sentences, and produce that sentence correctly and accurately, you can do that. You can take as much time as you want, and I highly recommend you do that when you can, because the more you produce inaccurately, incorrectly, the more likely you are to develop bad habits. Now, like I say, with speaking, you kind of, in certain situations, you're kind of forced to just go for it sometimes. So, okay, I'm in a situation, I need to get by this thing, or I'm in a situation where I'm speaking to a Chinese person, I'm just going to go for broke and I'm going to try and use this word, and it kind of works out. Sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you just make a mistake, and sometimes you don't know what mistake you made, but you just see a weird look on their face. Okay. Whereas with writing, you can take as much time as you need, and I suggest you do that slow. Writing is also very personal. This is great because, when you're speaking, unless you're speaking to yourself, which is also a cool thing to do. I like to do that sometimes in Chinese. That really helps me find gaps in my knowledge when I'm not with a tutor, for example, or just with my wife or with friends or whatever. But with writing, again, it's kind of connected to the idea of slow. You can take your time and think, but you can write whatever you want. You can't say whatever you want, even if you're paying someone to listen to you. There's certain things that you might not want to share with anyone, even people very close to you, right? But with writing, you can share your deepest thoughts and feelings, and you can then delete it afterwards if you want, or just keep it very well hidden if it's not something you want people to hear or see. And it's wonderful because if you write in a personal way, if you produce the language in a personal way, that's more engaging. There's more emotional, episodic memory associated with what you're producing, and you're more likely to, let's say, remember the things that you produced. So, or let's say the level of activation that you enjoy from the output you produce when writing, because it's personal, it's more effective. So you activate words easier, and you have a deeper memory of certain grammar functions or vocabulary. So that's the second reason. Another very important reason is writing is permanent. Now, there's a way of making speaking permanent, of course. You record yourself or record the conversation, but it's very unlikely that you're going to go through, if you have like a 45-minute or 1 hour online session with a tutor, maybe there was a couple of really golden moments in there, or a mistake that was corrected, but you didn't write it down, you didn't take notes. So that recording is not really much use to you because you're not exactly going to go scrubbing through it. Whereas with writing, it's fantastic as a benchmarking tool. So you can just write a journal to yourself, which is one of the things that I would suggest to you, or just have a notebook, writing things, whatever things come to mind. I'll give you tons of ideas in a minute. And then you can look back on it in 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, and see how far you've come. And it's just a nice thing to compare it to. You can compare yourself, your current self, to your past self, and it's just great that way. So the final one, I've kind of touched on it a few times already. Writing activates vocabulary very well. So it's kind of a tough, because this hasn't been technically scientifically proven, right? It's just the way top linguistic research has found that the effect that speaking and writing essentially output seems to have, and the place it has in language learning. And this is what it seems to do. Like I said, there's subconscious acquisition that goes on, but writing and speaking just help bring it all to the surface. And keep it there as long as you do a consistent practice. And like I say, if it's deep and emotional, and you take your time with it and you focus while you're doing it, when you click, I like to use the word click as well. When you click with things, when you activate new vocabulary or words, they'll stay at the surface. So next time you want to speak, even if you activated that word through writing, it's still the same area of the brain. You'll still be able to produce it. So writing, just as with speaking, it activates vocabulary, but it's very possible, again, don't have scientific research behind this, but it's very possible that writing is actually, pound for pound, more effective at activating vocabulary, bringing words that you have sort of down here in the back of your brain to here when you're in conversation, able to just throw them out whenever you like, be fluent with them if you like. So those are the key things to remember about writing. So let's look into actually how to go about writing, how to practice it. So I'm just going to say some powerful writing tips that we've collected over the years. The first one would be write little and often. And we kind of apply this philosophy, this way of thinking about tasks, studying, activities, whatever they may be. We apply it to all areas of study, because the idea of not trying to do too much at one time, just focus on starting. because your brain tends to associate starting with finishing. So start something small, start a sentence, and that's all you're going to do. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to either spend, say, 1 minute of time, but it's probably better results based. So I'm going to create a sentence for these 3 words, or I'm going to create one single sentence for this word. And that will often turn into more activities, but it can be quite time consuming, and it's better to produce quality, correct sentences, as I've already mentioned, than incorrect sentences, but a lot of them. Okay, so find those little moments throughout the day, just as we suggest with shadowing, repeating material, listening and speaking material at the same time, and reading, of course, and flashcards. And you just do it when you have a few moments. And yeah, it's better to do that than to say, okay, I'm going to spend the next hour writing an entire paragraph in Chinese and I have to finish it. You're not likely to even start doing that, let alone finish doing that or keep up with that kind of activity regularly. And of course, I've already mentioned this, get personal. Really, write a journal is a great idea. And you can even, if you have Chinese social media like WeChat or Weibo, you can share your progress. You can make a language learning journal, either written to yourself or spread it on social media, and make a single post every day or every other day or once a week about how you are doing with your learning. What are you studying today? And how did it go? Write your opinions on that. And that's just one thing that you could do that a lot of people do, a language learning journal, but it could be any kind of journal, it could be public or private. Get personal. Like I said, if you get personal, things are activated more effectively. Already touched on this too. Aim for 0 mistakes. More mistakes equals bad habits. And like I said, writing is slow. So really take advantage of that advantage. Next one here is get corrections. So this has a couple of levels to it. This is obviously where a tutor comes in great, and it's a nice idea to spend at least a portion of your sessions with your tutor correcting writing. So maybe your tutor could set you some homework, which is write some example sentences for certain words that you've covered, and you do them, or just you spend the first 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, whatever, however long it takes, to go over some writing you've done. Maybe you wrote a short post and you want him or her to help you correct it before you send it out. There's also a way of, if you sign up to a website that I really like called highnative.com. It used to be called Lang8 and it used to be free. I would say unfortunately it's now not free, but it's not free anymore, but it's also a ton better. It's really, really good. It looks great. It functions very well. You can basically go on here. I think it's like $5 or $6 a month, much less if you pay annually, and you've basically just got an ocean of native speakers there to correct your Chinese. And you can't necessarily, I'm not sure what the rules are these days, but I'm not sure if you could just post an entire essay on there and just like, oh, correct this for me. But like I said, you're not at this stage going to be, most of the people watching this are beginners or intermediates. You're not going to be writing essays anyway. So just send a sentence or a paragraph or two and say, does this sound natural? There's all these kinds of questions you can ask, and you'll get more than one answer, and very quickly as well, on exactly what's wrong with it in their opinion. So that's another way of getting corrections. All this is in the writing practice guide download that comes with this post that you can download below. So corrections are fantastic because you can create flashcards out of them. So this is like, I haven't done this that much in the past, but when I have done it, it's been so effective. And the only reason I haven't done it is just because I've been lazy and not kept up with it as much as I should. But you write some sentences, your sentences turn out to be wrong. You get them corrected by your tutor or by the high native people. Or whoever else is willing to do it. You create a close delete flashcard from that sentence. There you go. If you want to learn more about creating flashcards, check out our grammar video. I will leave a link to that in the description below as well. Next is use writing apps. So there's tons of these. I've actually, before I shot this video, I had another look, and there's a lot more out these days that have been released since I since I last looked. Basically, apps that are designed for writers, like for example, Writer, OMM, or IA Writer. Another one that we use personally for Mandarin Blueprint is Flow State. But this is a bit more, I don't know if that's suitable for writing Chinese though, when you're a non-Chinese speaker, because the cool thing about Flow State is it's designed to get you into flow state. So if you stop typing, the words like disappear after about, I think it's about 10 or 20 seconds. So, and there's been a few times where Phil or myself have just like sort of dozed off, or the keyboard's gone dead, and it's just disappeared, like an hour of writing. So it's good to try and get that. There's also a mode that you can use within that doesn't have that sort of that function, but maybe you want to stick to OmWriter or another one. And there's tons of other ones. Just go have a search. But what they do is they block out distractions, and they really just everything on the page is just a cursor waiting for you to type out your thoughts. So I would highly suggest exploring those to help you focus a little bit better. Another one is write by hand. So writing by hand is an interesting one because, I don't have the scientific data to back this up. I think that's the third time I said this in this video, but I just want to cover myself here. But there's something about writing by hand that it just feels better. I can't really explain it. There's a deep connection between the mind and the hand. I don't know why, but if writing is a superior form of activation or output, then writing by hand is potentially even more, more effective. But it's more time consuming. It's far more difficult. And you're not here to be a calligrapher. You're here to just learn Chinese. Very, very few of you would want to become calligraphers. So, but even if it doesn't look that great, just getting your thoughts out on paper by hand, there's something special about it. And it's easy to get lazy when you just type everything. Trust me. Most Chinese people will tell you, if you say, if you ask them to write relatively simple characters or simple words, they'll forget which character is used in which compound word. And whereas they'll be able to type it, of course, everyone can type. But writing it out, a lot of people are forgetting that these days because just the reliance on convenience, smartphones, typing, computers. So it's a bit of an epidemic, actually. People forgetting how to write. So if you want to be one of those people that doesn't, it's very impressive, extra impressive. You can write by hand. Just an extra thing there. And one last thing is use writing activities. Oh, my face is blocking the thing again. But writing activities, I've basically, for the speaking guide, which again, link in the description, there is a guide that you can download with that, a download that has a list of, I think, 15 speaking activities. And next to every speaking activity that can also be applied to writing, I put a W. So here it is, our favorite speaking and writing activities. And again, just as a reminder, because you've probably already watched my speaking video, describing a photo, for example, you get a photo and you can write about it instead of just speaking about it. And these are all things that can be done on your own as well, most of them. So you don't need to pay for a tutor or pay for High Native. You can just do it on your own and get corrections from someone later. You don't have to do it with them in the moment, because obviously that's a lot of, if you're doing, especially doing it with a tutor, just sitting there writing when you're paying for them, it's a bit silly. So you'll want to do this between your sessions, and then as for homework or something like that, and then get them to correct it. Maybe pay them an extra couple of dollars to do it outside of the session if you like. You can discuss that with your tutor. Interesting question and topics. So you just go through anything with a W. They're fantastic. I love these activities, and there's just endless amounts of content that you could create with this. And remember, as you're going through, just focus on getting everything right. Make sure that, I'm about to type something out or write something by hand. There's a word that I want to use that I think is the feeling or thought that I'm feeling in English, and I want to express that, but I'm not sure if it's used in this particular way. Do you just guess? Do you just write it out anyway? No. You go and look on your dictionary, on Pleco. I always say it both ways now because I don't know which one's right. And you look at some example sentences, or you go to Youdao, which is a Chinese person's dictionary that they use for English, but it's incredibly good for also for us Chinese learners. How is it used? How is it used? It's not cheating. It's just, you know, you're getting the acquiring the pattern of this word, the grammar, how it's used grammatically, and then you just apply that same pattern in your sentence you're about to write. Okay, so do that a lot and take your time. So there you go, guys. That's about everything we have for you on how to improve your writing skill. If you have any questions, as usual, get in touch at contact@mandarinblueprint.com and get out there and start building that writing habit.